Hiya, it's Jen Ives, and this is Lobotomy World, my podcast. How are you? We're going to be talking about something a little bit difficult today, and listen, that's what we do here from time to time. We have fun, okay? We do have fun. We have our fun. You know, sometimes I'll come on and I'll be like, hi. You know, we have a laugh. That's established. But sometimes, you know, a podcast calls for a bit of reflection, you know, a little bit of serious thinking. So I just want to say from the off, this is a trigger warning, I guess. We're going to be talking a little bit about murder, the words that you're not supposed to say on here. It's really hard to actually give trigger warnings on YouTube. I'm just realising that now because you have to do them at the beginning of the podcast, don't you? But then there's all these rules on YouTube that's like, oh, you can't say this word in the first 10 minutes and you can't say this, otherwise you'd be demonetized. So how are you supposed to give a trigger warning without saying a stupid word like Mordor or snuicide? Trigger warning, this episode features conversations about snuicide, and then people are there like, what the hell is snuicide? I'm going to be talking about the Minneapolis shooting today because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. If you don't know, America had yet another shooting. They call it, you know, like a school shooting traditionally. This was a church shooting, but there was a school as well. So it was like a kind of a double whammy in that sense. Oh yeah, and child death is also another thing that we're not going to be talking about those things in any great detail. I'm not going to be going in on those points specifically. But, you know, I just want you to know that that's what we're going to be talking about today. And if you're sensitive to that, or it's a bit of a downer for you and you don't really want to talk about, hear about it or anything, you know, you're welcome to not watch the podcast, as all of you are all the time. Now, obviously, the reason that I'm going to be talking about this, it's not because I was involved in it in any way, just before anybody, you know, gets their ducks in the wrong row. I think that's the saying. I do realise that the way I kind of teed this up, it sounded maybe more seriously like I was involved or something. You know, like, oh, we've got to talk about something. I've got to talk about something serious today. I'm a school shooter. No, it's not. That's not what we're doing. And I'm also not making light of the situation. I should probably preface. I have a hard time talking about serious subjects because I'm a pretty goofy person and I have a defense mechanism. It's like, I have to make a joke about that. I have to be silly. And I'm going to be, okay? Because otherwise I won't be able to get through the bloody thing because it's sad. It's a sad story. Real thing that happened, not like a story, but like a real thing that happened this week. But the reason why I am talking about it is because I'm trans. And a lot of the people that view my videos are. You know, I'm not naive. Oh, I should also address, I am wearing pyjamas. I'm wearing pyjamas. I bought these pyjamas today. And, you know, I'm really bad at looking after myself generally. And I don't buy myself a lot of nice clothes. I don't buy myself, you know, proper things that human beings need to survive. But today I saw a pair of pyjamas that I liked. They've got little ghosts on them and moons, and they're really comfortable. They're really soft and nice, and I thought, I'm going to buy those. And then I tried them on at home to see if they fit, because, you know, I don't know, are you allowed to try pyjamas on in the shop? I've never done that before. Also, I'll be honest, you know, I'm a bit apprehensive about using the changing room. So one of the things that I usually do nowadays is I just try them on at home and leave the tags on. Anyway, I tried it on and I was like, oh, these fit. These are great. and then I was like, oh no, I'm doing the podcast. But then I thought, well, no, I'm going to keep them on actually for the duration of the podcast because they're so comfy. But then I was like, oh wait, I'm going to be talking about this Minneapolis church school shooting. Maybe it's not appropriate to wear my pajamas. But then I thought, you know what? It's my house and it's my podcast. I'll wear my pajamas. Why? You can talk about serious things and wear your pajamas. Like if I was reporting on this in the sense of like I was breaking the news of this, I'd probably take off the pajamas. I'd go for something a little bit more respectful. But what I'm saying is don't come at me because of the pajamas. They're just comfortable and they're nice. And the more comfortable I am, the better podcast I do. But obviously I am a trans person. I'm a trans woman. It's called I'm a trans woman. I'm here. Get used to it. I am trans woman. Hear me roar. But I know that a lot of my viewership is also of that ilk. And I know that, you know, we talk about trans issues from time to time. Not all the time, but from time to time. And this is, unfortunately, a trans-themed news story because the shooter was a trans woman. Now, listen. I know that whenever one of these school shootings happens now, the right-wing media in the States and some of them over here like to come out with like crazy conspiracy theories about, you know, they often say, oh, the shooter was trans, you know, before anybody even has any proper information about them, especially if the shooter looks a little bit like ambiguous. They're like, the shooter was trans, you know, the shooter had short hair, or the shooter had long hair, or oh my god, the shooter owned a blahage. I mean, that would be, I would consider that proof. But a lot of those cases have come out to be proven not to have been trans people. And, you know, the reason why that is happening is because there is a sort of concerted effort at the moment among certain organisations, certain groups, to monster and vilify and spread misinformation about trans people at pretty much every turn that they can. And so as a result, you know, every school shooter then becomes, oh my god, they're trans, or they're in some way affiliated with the trans movement, because they like to kind of conflate the idea of like mental illness with transgender people, which, as we know, is not appropriate. You know, trans people do suffer from mental illness sometimes, usually as a result of the prejudice that they experience, the lack of acceptance, etc. And it can be quite mentally taxing to exist as a trans person in today's climate. But that's not what they're saying. What these bad actors are saying is, you know, trans people are inherently dangerous and are inherently mentally ill. Which I wish I could say is something that is obviously untrue, because it is. But I feel like, you know, a lot of people nowadays do have that in their head as a sort of characterization of us, because of those groups, you know, spreading ridiculous misinformation. But, you know, this time around, on this occasion, I gotta tell you guys, it seems like she was a trans woman. I'm not gonna name her. I'm not gonna put any pictures up of her. But what I do want to say is, you know, what she did is awful. Okay? What she did is horrible. And a part of me feels like it's kind of silly that I have to say that, but because of the kind of subject matter and because a trans person is involved, I guess I do just want to get it on record that I am anti school shooting. I know that's a brave stance. I know not a lot of people have said that. I'm brave and, I'm willing to say the things that other people aren't willing to say. For example, I do not condone, I abhor and think it's quite bad to kill children. And that's one of the things that this trans woman did, is she shot and killed 2 young innocent children. And whoever you are, if you do that, you're a bad person. Like, that's cowardly. That's completely undeserved. These are innocent people, innocent children. She also shot loads of other people, wounded loads of other people. But only two people died. And they were unfortunately children. It's never appropriate. It's never, ever, ever acceptable to take out your anger, your frustrations, your depression on innocent people, let alone innocent children. Like, it's cowardly and it's wrong. And I'm pretty confident in saying that this person who did this awful thing, is not very nice. I know, but they suck. They really do truthfully suck. I mean, that's an understatement. And they are now dead, as these school shooters tend to be. She ended her own life. See, I told you this was going to be a heavy subject, didn't I? I did tell you. I did warn you. If you're still here, I warned you. But listen, I didn't ever say that this was a straight up comedy podcast. I like to come on here and talk truthfully about the stuff that has been on my mind over the past week. And this has been on my mind, and I have been seeing a lot of discourse about this. And the reason why I am being so overt about the fact that she was trans is because I've seen a lot of discourse online that tries to point to reasons why she isn't trans, like, oh, he, this is the discourse that you're getting. He did this, she did that, or they're saying, no, actually, like someone left me a comment saying, oh no, did you not know that, because I wrote an article about it as well, and someone left me a comment on it being like, oh, did you not know that that she detransitioned, so it's he, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, like, I watched her videos, I watched her video of her notebook with her suicide note in it and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, glueicide. I know it's YouTube, but that was stupid. This is a slight tangent here, but I know that a lot of people care about their monetization and their sponsors and all that kind of stuff. But I think if you are a YouTuber or a podcast or whatever, and you elect to talk about serious subjects, like if you decide that you want to talk about like true crime, murder, death, all this kind of serious, heavy stuff, that's the decision you've made. And I think that when you use these let's face it, stupid words like grape or schmuicide or whatever it is that people are saying now, I think you actually unintentionally, I understand that you're trying to do a workaround, and I know that everyone needs to make their money, but I do feel like in that instance you're doing a disservice to the story because it sounds so silly. I think if you're going to talk about those serious subjects, I just think you should talk about them in an adult way. And if that means that you're not going to be able to make money doing that, then maybe you should just pivot, talk about something else. Anyway, that's my soapbox on that. I've been thinking about that for a little while. I'm just tired of hearing it. I'm tired of hearing people use stupid words that make you sound like a dumb baby. to talk about like child abduction and like missing people and things like that. It's like, no, we should take this seriously, more seriously than whatever this is. But, you know, I watched her suicide note thing video that she did. And in the video, what she does is she shows all of her guns and ammunition, and all of them are like written on. She's like customized all of the magazines, gun magazines and stuff. And each one says something like some sort of internet in-joke on it, like some sort of racist 4chan, I imagine, esque statement on there, whether it be about Jewish people or black people, or, you know, and it's really quite cringe and pathetic. But to me, it's very obvious that she is trans. The research that I've done into her is that, you know, she legally changed her name. Her parents knew, I believe she was undergoing some kind of treatment. Also, you know, no one really knows at this point what her motive was for doing it. But there are things coming out about how she possibly was struggling with being trans. So, you know, it seems pretty clear that she is trans. And she looks trans. Like, she's trans. And the reason why, again, why I'm labouring this point is not because I want to make the trans community feel bad. It's not because I want to rub salt in anyone's wounds or anything like that. It's because I think that, understandably, some of the trans community right now are in denial about it. And there's this sort of assumption, there's this sort of confusion and this kind of coming to terms with the idea that, like, no, actually, like, a trans person could do this. And I think that's like I think being in denial about that is really weird and also slightly problematic, because, listen, my perspective of it is that trans people, I know that this is going to be an edgy statement that people are going to disagree with, but trans people are people. We are people. And being trans is not just one thing. Now, I know the internet likes to create the image that being trans is like this universal experience, right? Oh, we all love Blahaj, for example. I'm not going to get back on that again, but there are other things, you know, which I understand why they emerge, because they're cultural and it's good to have culture. But, you know, this idea of like, oh, we all feel the same way about this. Oh, we all like this type of music. You know, oh, we all dress this way. We all relate to our first this experience, insert whatever, like, dumb thing. And I know that at the end of the day, it's just people trying to find connection on the internet, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But I don't relate to a lot of that stuff. Being trans is a thing that is a big part of me, a big part of my identity. Obviously, it's a sort of pivotal thing in my life that's had a lot of effects on my life. But I'm always wary of, and I don't like to try to make it my entire personality. For me, you know, I'm a person first, and I love being trans, and sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do. It's complicated. But I think of myself as a person first, a unique person, a person with lots of different interests, lots of different traits that don't necessarily relate to being trans. So what I'm trying to get across here is that, like, yeah, obviously it's possible for a trans person to commit a crime like this. It's not usual. It's not something that you see every day. Usually a lot of trans crime is hypothetical. A lot of it is spoken about as like, oh, but what if you did this? What if a trans woman did that? What if they went, and it's like, yeah, but what about the stuff that we actually do? I don't know what the most common trans crime is before a TERF jumps in and goes, doing horrible sexual stuff. No, it's probably something like really stupid, like jaywalking too sassily. No, I don't know. I really don't know. But I think that, like, when we try to exclude ourselves from real life human actions like crime, not saying that like it's a common human action for someone to shoot kids at a church, but what I'm saying is that, like, anyone could do this. Trans people are not more inclined to do it, but they're also not, it's not impossible. And this sounds so basic, but I just wanted to address it because I've just seen a lot of denial on the internet. People going, no, she's not trans. A lot of kind of like really trying to find reasons why not. And that's something that we're guilty of doing a lot, I think. And I just want to say that I completely get why we do it. I get it. Because trans people get a lot of hate generally. Undeserved hate, We get accused of a lot of things that we don't do. And so because of that, it's only natural that we would want to find a reason to not be spoken about in this way. Unfortunately, this person chose to do this thing. And we as a community I don't think we have a responsibility to necessarily speak out against it, because to me, I think it's quite obvious that we do not agree with those actions as a community. But I think we're playing ourselves if we're just going to pretend like it's not possible. Trans people do commit crimes. Caitlyn Jenner, she's a bad trans person, right? What I mean by that is she's not a bad trans person. She's a good trans person in the sense of, like, say what you want about Caitlyn Jenner, and please do in the comments below. Tell me what you think. But she did being a trans woman really, really well. She's one of those people that was, she's rich. She's rich as hell. And she transitioned. I know some people like to make fun of Caitlyn Jenner's appearance. That's not what I make fun of her for. But I don't think it's fair, because she transitioned really late in her life. And, as I say, she was lucky enough to have lots of money, lots of resources. But what I'm saying is she turned that thing around. She flipped what she had around. Do you know what I mean? Like, she came out the gate swinging in terms of looks, in terms of being snatched. You have to give her props for that. She did the best with what she had, and she did really good. Like, it helps to come from, like, that family, I guess, but she knew what she was doing. But when I say she was a bad trans person, I mean is she's a bad person who is trans. Like, firstly, because obviously, and this isn't going to be all about Caitlyn Jenner, I'm just trying to show you that bad trans people can be a thing. She killed somebody in her car. I think that's common knowledge. And she's also just, like, one of the most unhelpful trans people ever. She just does not seem to care at all about other trans people. I guess my whole thing is that I want trans people to be equal in society, and I want us to be treated fairly within society. And I don't think that canonizing us, I don't think that like glorifying us or trying to make out like we're all these like sensitive little angels who can't engage with the world. It's like there's a certain kind of archetype of like the fey trans person who's just like, I just want to be myself. I just want people to, whatever. It's like, come on, like that's dated. Like I want to be a person, and I want to be a full person, and I want to be treated as such with respect and, whatever, everything that comes with that experience. I don't want to be held on a pedestal as a trans person. I think that stuff is quite cringy. And we live in a pretty sick society. So it only makes sense that there will be trans people who are also a product of that sick society. And this person who did this definitely was sick. But predictably, the American media and the British media a little bit, but this is an American issue. The American media has been pretty disgraceful with the way they're reporting this. A lot of them have been framing it as, trans lunatic does this thing because trans people are mentally ill. And there's a lot of misgendering going on, which, listen, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about it because it's like, it's not the most important issue at hand, when kids have died and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to like stand up and be like, you shouldn't misgender this killer. Optically, that's a bit silly. That being said, I do still ardently believe that. I call when trans people do bad things, we always go through a misgendering season. I've noticed this numerous times whenever there's a story about some killer in prison who's decided to transition, or some, sex pest who says they're trans or whatever, or maybe even is. We get misgendering season. We get the media they get hopped up and they start to really relish in the misgendering of this person in the media. And usually this person is like either behind bars or they're dead. And so people just go crazy because there's this weird, I find it very, very strange standard that we have, which is that like, I think trans people are, for the most part, this is how I feel like we're treated like our identities and the way we're allowed to live our lives is like a gift from straight society. It's like being gendered correctly, or, getting something on your birth certificate changed, or, someone treating you with respect. It's almost like what's being communicated to us by things like this news cycle, the misgendering season, is that like if you fuck up in any way, like it's not clear how much you have to fuck up or don't fuck up, but we, and I say we as in like straight society, we can take it away from you. Your acceptance and your freedom is a gift. And this idea that if you are a bad person, if you are a criminal, somehow that should mean that not all criminals are bad people, by the way, but some are, a lot are. But this idea that if you do something wrong, that you should somehow have your identity stripped away, your gender identity and your, for example, access to hormones or anything that helps preserve your dignity as a person. For trans people, that seems to be free game. Now, I'm not trying to make a defense for this person. I don't care about this person. They are dead. The killer, they are dead. But because they are dead, when the media does this stuff, really they're doing it to us. They're communicating to us our place. They're saying, listen, don't you get any ideas about stepping out of line? Because if you do, you're a man. But we are currently in misgendering season, and the sooner we can get out of that, the better. It's my least favourite season. Not a fan of it. But people do like to relish in it. Like, people love misgendering season. Mostly, straight people love misgendering season, cis people. But, some trans people love misgendering season. I've seen this from trans people too, particularly online. When a trans person does something bad, they're not trans anymore. They've been stripped of their identity. They're a man. And it's like, you shouldn't really, it's not that I care about the child killer that you're talking about. It's more just like, but by the grace of God go I. Like what would happen to you or me? We never know how our lives are going to go. I'm pretty confident I'm never going to become a school shooter. But you never know, if you're going to get in trouble. People tend to fall into hard times sometimes. And I don't want to have my identity stripped away or for that to feel somehow acceptable just because you committed a crime. I think we should have higher standards for how we treat people. But of course, the media reaction has been pretty brutal. A lot of these right-wing institutions, these news rags and things, they're using this as a jumping off point for more and more and more transphobia. It's like, a trans person did something bad. Let's make the wild claim that this behaviour is innate in trans people. I'm sorry, but the idea that trans people have an innate violent nature is ridiculous. Just because you keep saying a thing over and over and over again, it doesn't actually make it true. It does unfortunately mean that more people are prone to eat it up. But, let's be real. Let's really just be real about this. America has had a problem with school shootings for a really long time. All you have to do is take a really cursory glance at the stats of American school shootings to know that American school shootings are, by proportion, they are mostly white men who do it. White men and boys do school shootings. There's no proof, statistically, that trans people are more prone to it or the LGBT people are more prone to it. And the fact is that America is sort of primed at the moment to dislike trans people. They over the past, certainly over Trump's entire election period, there's been a real intentional priming of seeds being planted to be like, well, when a trans person does eventually do something terrible, it's all going to be lined up. It's all going to be fair game, and that is kind of what we're seeing. I don't think it's again, it seems silly to say it, but obviously it's not fair for an entire community to be blamed for the actions of one nutso person. I always think about this when it comes to someone like, Myra Hindley. If you're an American watcher, you don't know who Myra Hindley is. She was part of this zany double act called The Moors Murders. The Moors Murderers. It was her and Ian Brady. Basically, in the late 60s, they were a couple. And Myra Hindley is she's regarded as one of the more despicable, villainous serial killers, real life serial killers and rapists. Her and her boyfriend Ian Brady, they killed and sexually abused multiple children. They're real awful baddies. There's been lots of documentaries, lots of films about them, all that kind of stuff. You might have heard of Fred and Rose West. It's kind of similar to them, kind of in that ballpark. And I think about that because, Myra Hindley was a cisgendered, straight, white woman. And she did some of the most horrific things you can imagine. And yet, somehow, for some reason, when she did those things, people didn't turn around and say, well, there you go. This is what women do. This is what straight, cis, white women do. We'd better punish them collectively. No, people understandably acknowledged that for a cis woman to do something like this is actually a huge abnormality. No one was calling for all cis women to be rounded up and put into a institution. But for some reason for us, it's like, I'm not saying that is going to happen, but I have heard people calling for stuff like that. I don't want to scare anybody. Although you never bloody know these days, do you? The thing is, when something terrible happens, understandably, everybody wants to understand it. Everybody wants to find out the cause, get to the bottom of how something like this could go under the radar, and try to figure out some preventative way so it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, school shootings they're ridiculous in America, aren't they? I mean, school shootings have sort of become as all-American as apple pie. They're you think of them when you think about American things, like, McDonald's, Dr. Pepper, school shootings, like they've just become a part of that. And seemingly, like, they just keep happening. And again, as I say, understandably, people want to get to the bottom of it. But I wanted to just read you this little stat that I found, this little piece of information that I read on The Independent. And I didn't know this, and I just think it's worth informing you of it as well. So apparently, a month before the Minneapolis church shooting, the Trump administration cut $18.5 million in funding from a Homeland Security program aimed at identifying and preventing potential mass shooters. I'm going to say that again. The Trump administration, Donald Trump, you heard of him. Don't know if you've heard of this guy. Pretty wacky guy. He cut $18.5 million. That is an amount of money that I think most of us can't even imagine. He cut that from a funding program, from funding a program from Homeland Security aimed at identifying and preventing potential mass shooters. Now, I'm not saying that action had a direct cause and effect to this, but what I am saying is, if they hadn't have done that, at least there might have been more of a chance that it wouldn't have happened. I think that's fair to say. It's really interesting, isn't it, that a government administration can make so many terrible choices, so many vindictive, awful choices that negatively affect regular people in a country, and somehow, some way, the blame can somehow fall on trans people. It's kind of ridiculous. I really hope that one day, if there's anyone left to do it, I hope that there'll be a retrospective, a historical retrospective. People can look back and go, wow, wasn't that a insane time where people were just like out of their minds and obsessed with trans people to a degree that is like, that's unhealthy, And And just to come back to it again, that's why I say that, it's important that we at least acknowledge that this person was most probably trans, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they were, what they are, what they were. What matters is what they did, ultimately. And trying to shoehorn in that, they did what they did because they were trans, or, that could have been prevented. Like, what's the implication there? What are they trying to say? That, like, it could have been prevented how? By not letting them transition, or, making sure that trans people are just, like, locked up in a mental institution as soon as they come out? Like, I don't see how that is helpful. I guess it's not that deep. People just don't like trans people. Not everybody. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that do like us. But the impression that I get from the kind of reporting that happens, and it's not just this, it's constant. It's easy to feel like society is against you, because some of the things that these politicians and news outlets are saying is kind of disgusting. In fact, that it must be disgusting when the mayor, the Lord Mayor, I don't know if they call them that in America, but the mayor is one of those words. Mayor. It's one of those words. The more you say it, the kind of stupid it is. You sound like a sheep. Mayor. But the mayor of Minneapolis had to come out during this time of awful grieving for the death of children and the wounding of innocent people, had to come out and make a statement saying, like, hey, can we just, like, chill on the transphobia a bit as well? Like, let me read you this statement. So, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey warned against any hate being directed towards the trans community. So he's quoted as saying, anyone using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity, he said at Wednesday's news conference. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids. And he's right. Ultimately, the saddest thing about all of this is just how many people's lives it demolishes. People do not recover well from this stuff. And I'm not just talking about the immediate victims and their families. Obviously, they're the people that we should be holding the most place in our heart for. But, the perpetrator as well, they have families. They have people who are completely not responsible for any of this. They could never have known that this was going to happen. And they have friends, and it's just gonna destroy their lives. And look, I'm not saying that you have to have empathy for the perpetrator. It's not helpful to put that out there, when stuff like this happens. But it is important that we try to understand as best we can how this stuff happens, so we can try to prevent it. Because at the end of the day, the thing that we want the least is more of this happening. We do not want any more of this. People that do this kind of stuff, people that grab a gun and think, oh, I'm gonna, take my anger out on the world at innocent children, those people are ultimately deeply weak people, weak in moral character, weak in so many ways. And it's not something that I expect anybody to find empathy for. But as I say, I do think let's try to understand it and let's try to prevent it in the future. Hot take, guys. Hot take alert. Jen's got a big smarty pants cap on, and you know what? Why has nobody ever tried asking that? Why has nobody ever said to the the government, hey, maybe you should look into why these people are doing this. I'm just putting the world to rights on my bloody podcast. And the fact that most of us never even contemplate or, imagine doing anything like this or taking our frustrations out on any innocent people. Like, I don't know, call me crazy, call me mentally ill, but I think that is kind of deserving of a little bit of admiration. Like, rather than villainizing trans people at a time when one of us has done something bad, maybe we should be being like, wow, like, isn't it good that we don't do this more often? And, when it is announced on the news that a trans person has committed some sort of crime, I think the appropriate reaction, other than, oh my God, that's awful, should be, wow, I'm glad that is a freak abnormality and an outlier, because trans people don't usually do that kind of shit. Anyway, I'm sorry if today's episode was a bit too heavy. As I say, we keep it real here on Lobotomy World. This ain't your grandma's trans podcast. This ain't your grandma's queer LGBT podcast. I'd like to see your grandma do an LGBT podcast. I think that'd be really nice and really, as long as it was as long as it was like inclusive and nice. It wasn't just her going, I hate the gays. That I don't want to see. Although I would want to see it, I guess. It would be kind of funny if it was your nan, your silly nan. But yeah, it was a bit of a heavy one. But listen, that's what this is sometimes. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's light. Unfortunately, a lot of trans stuff in the news recently tends to be on the heavier side. If you want something a little bit less heavy than this, I did a new video that I put out on Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, called Charlie Kaufman is Trans, a video essay, part 1 of an extensive series in which I go through every single one of Charlie Kaufman's films and analyse it to prove to you that Charlie Kaufman is trans. It's, in my opinion, a very good video essay, but then again, it's not my place to judge that, is it? It's your place to do that. So what you need to do is you need to go and watch that in order to have an opinion on it. So please, it only has like 1,000 views right now. Please go and watch it. And if you can boost it somehow, if you can share it with your friends or post it to a Reddit group that I'm not allowed to post to because I don't know how to use Reddit properly, I'd appreciate that. There will be a members only episode tomorrow, which is a little bit late again. Sorry about that. I'm supposed to upload it on Wednesday, but I was doing the video essay, so that's why. So you're actually getting more this week than you normally get. But I'm going to do the members episode, and that'll be up tomorrow. If you'd like to become a member and have access to the members episode, you can do that by joining as a YouTube member, or you can go to www.patreon.com/Lobotomy World to join the Patreon, where you will also get everything. Also, I don't know if you caught this, but I am going to start doing occasional, casual little gaming streams, either on this channel. It'll be just me playing a game. My face probably won't be in it. It'll be like a picture, but I'll be talking over it and taking, comments and answering questions and things like that. And I did a poll saying, what do you want the first game that I play to be? And the choices were Ratatouille for PSP, Rayman 2 for N64, or Theme Park World for the PS1. And coming in at 49%, the majority was Ratatouille. So, not 100% sure when that'll be. It'll be in the next week or so. But yeah, you can tune in for that. Keep an eye out for it, actually. Thank you all for your continued support. Thank you all for sticking with the podcast, even when it's difficult. Even when it's an episode like this, because All I want from this podcast is to be honest and for it to be an outlet for how I'm actually feeling about things. And always happy to have people disagree with me. I can take criticism, believe it or not. Some people think I can't, but I don't know, I think I do a pretty good job. But that is how I currently feel. But please do chime in the comments, as they say, because if you don't, I don't know what happens if you don't. Something bad. I've been led to believe from YouTubers that if you don't comment on the video, it's like someone kills you or something. I don't know. Like you die. Like if you don't comment on the video, like you have bad dreams for a year. You have 7 years of bad luck or something. I don't know. We will have a more upbeat episode next week. I promise. I'll find something that is a little bit cheerier than this. Hopefully we won't have another terrorist attack or something like that. Let's hope for some nice trans news next week. This is my mission to you. If you're a subscriber and you engage with either the posts that I do on here or the Patreon or the Reddit, there's a Reddit as well. If you engage with any of that, keep an eye out for some genuinely good trans news. Something funny, something interesting. I'll do the same, but the more eyes we have on it, the better it is. Let's try and have some positivity next week. Okay? That's all I'm asking. A little bit of positivity. Never hurt anyone, did it? All right, everybody, boils and ghouls, as the Crypt Keeper would say. I hope you have a lovely week, and I promise I won't be in my flipping pajamas next week.